Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the State of Scottish Football here live on A State of Mind. You know the drill, we're currently live across Facebook and LinkedIn, I almost said Instagram, they're off to a fantastic start. YouTube, Twitch, I'm not sure if we're live on Twitter, there may be an issue with that at the moment, but I'm not 100%, but anyway, we've got 5 games to talk through tonight. Of course, one team did miss out, well 2 teams did miss out, but we'll get onto that in a minute. I'm joined tonight by David Smith. David, how are you doing?
Very well, Stuart. I hope you're well as well.
I'm not bad at all. And as I said there, it was a pretty high scoring weekend to say the least, but we only had 5 games because Hibs Livy, there's a bit of a COVID issue going on at Hibs at the minute, and therefore that's now the 3rd game in a row that they've had to postpone. Do you think Hibs are quite fortunate not to have had a points forfeit so far?
Yeah, it's massively frustrating for Hibs, first and foremost, that they've not had any action of late because they'd have wanted to turn away the predicament that they've had in terms of results in recent weeks. So massively frustrating for Jack Ross's side, but also on the other side, I was being a bit polite in the show last Monday evening when I was asked a question about what repercussions Hibs should get, and I thought the way I find it best, but having thought about it in reflection, I think there maybe could have been a lot more than just a fine. I think a points deduction could easily be of the highest order if indeed it is true that there's any COVID situations with regards to people not doing their jobs as professional footballers in a COVID-related environment. So, yeah, but we don't know the ins and outs, so we don't know what happens internally. So, I'm being polite in that front here.
Definitely, and of course, we've seen a few teams throughout the summer and towards the back end of last season have to forfeit games because they couldn't go on because of COVID. But everybody always seems to forget the team that they were supposed to play, and I feel a bit sorry for Ross County in that sense because obviously they'd come off the back of a fantastic victory against Dundee, coming up against a Hibs team who were 3 losses on the trot. You know, it was possibly the perfect time to play them. And then obviously Hibs have to postpone the game twice, and it totally gets blown out of the water. Do you think that's a bit unfortunate from Ross County's point of view?
Yeah, 100%. I think that kind of told yesterday in a way because it was the first game in 11 days yesterday when they played at Ibrox away to Rangers, and they made a great start to that game, going 1-0 up thanks to Joseph Humble, which will come on to later on in the show. But Rangers' quality stood through. But also, I do feel another game could have put Ross County in a far better position than they were. So massively frustrated for the Dingwall club, yeah.
Definitely, and of course, Livy missed out this weekend as well, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with Hibs. But we'll move on to a game that did happen at the weekend, and Celtic securing a 4-2 victory over Dundee. Of course, David, you were at this game, you know plenty about it, but I'll start off by saying how impressive were Celtic in this game as a whole?
Massively impressive, and the only frustration for Ange Postecoglou's side is not would have been more, I would say, because I mean they were really good, they were ruthless and scored goals at the right times, but also the attacking duo of Jota and Kyogo was really good, and Dundee were very lacklustre and pitiful at the back. If I'm going to be honest with you, the Langston's could have done a bit more for some of the goals. I'm going to be honest with you on, but that doesn't rule out Celtic's quality because Celtic were dominant yesterday and very much deserve that victory at Dens Park. But also Dundee defensively need improving. I might be wrong, but I think they are one of the worst defensively in this league. So Dundee have a 3-week window now to go and turn things around, and it's a big 3 weeks coming up for Dundee because Dundee have been improving of late. They have picked up some good results against some teams, but this is massively frustrating for James Peake's side. And it's massively frustrating for James as a manager because he used to play as a defender during his playing career, including obviously being Hibernian captain. So yeah, for Celtic, they showed their quality yesterday. And I made the point to a couple of friends yesterday that Turnbull and McGregor weren't really in the game yesterday. And for them 2 players not to be in the game, but still come away with a 4-2 victory against Dundee, kind of shows how good and how quality Celtic were yesterday. And the fact that Kyogo and Jota did get on the ball, but also Anthony Ralston, it's important that he doesn't go under the radar. He was fantastic yesterday, set up a 3 goals and all round a very good performance. And I can very much understand now, having watched him close by, why he's not in the Scotland squad. I just can't understand why he's not in the Scotland squad. I think he's a better right back, if I'm going to be honest with you, than Patterson and O'Donnell right now. But and I know it's a bit bold, but I think it's true based on what I've seen yesterday. But also, yeah, a lot of quality, but across the 90 minutes, but also a little bit of frustration because they conceded the 2 goals and Dundee scored them 2 goals through 3 headers, or indeed players not picking up, like Sir Danny Mullen or Lee Ashcroft, which told them the 2 goals for Dundee yesterday.
Definitely, and I want to touch on Anthony Ralston to begin with, because coming through, he kind of broke through at the same time as Kieran Tierney, obviously on opposite flanks in the defence, and it's safe to say it's gone a lot better for Tierney initially than it has for Ralston, and it sort of looked like his Celtic career was over under Neil Lennon, and prior to that, obviously loan spells away at United, it just didn't look like he was ever going to get that chance, but is absolutely thriving under Ange Postecoglou. At the weekend there, we got the assist for the 3rd goal. The first goal comes from his shot as well, albeit, it came off the post. Jota was there to net in the rebound, and he's recently signed a new contract as well. And I think you make a very good point there that he could be in that Scotland setup. We are crying out for a right back, and although Nathan Patterson and Calvin Ramsey are highly rated to come in, Tony Ralston is playing more than Nathan Patterson certainly is at the moment, and I think he's a better fullback than Stephen O'Donnell. Do you think he is very unlucky to have missed out on the Scotland squad?
Yeah, first and foremost, we are definitely not on Twitter, because our colleague Colin Waters just says that we can't get onto Twitter. So there you are. If you're on YouTube, thank you very much. But back at your original point about Ralston, I felt he's been massively, it'll be massively frustrating and massively deterring for a young man not to be in that Scotland squad. Because O'Donnell has just been a defensive-minded player in the last few weeks, but also alongside that, Patterson's hardly had a lot of game time at Rangers. Ralston has. Ralston's signed a new contract, justifiably so, deserved new contract, and also there's a possibility that this season has probably kick-started Ralston's career at Celtic to an extent, because it just hasn't clicked for him in the last few years, either through loan spells or injury or potentially even attitude problems. Not that I'm saying that Ralston's got a bad attitude about him, but this season, Postecoglou was quite an attack-minded manager, right? Compared to like a Lennon, right? Lennon's a lot more laid back in terms of he's a lot more wayward in his play and patient in his play, whilst Postecoglou is more forward-thinking. I mean, Greg Taylor at times can get forward, but not as much as Ralston. And Ralston has done very well in terms of getting up the park, but he also did a lot of the defensive work as well. And some of his defensive awareness duties are probably a lot better than the centre halves that Celtic have at present, if I'm going to be honest with you. And that just shows Ralston, for me, was man of the match yesterday. You don't realise how good he is until you see it in front of your own eyes. And that was the case for me yesterday. And by the way, back onto Jota and Kyogo, you don't realise how really good they are until you see them in front of your own eyes. Jota, what a player, skillful, got a tenacity about him, likes to take on defenders, no fear from the man. Kyogo, intelligent. Probably the best forward I've ever seen playing Scottish football. But live, that is. Not that. I'd probably say Henrik Larsson's.
I was going to say Henrik Larsson, hopefully not listening.
I'm saying Henrik Larsson's probably in the same level as him in terms of obviously the amount of goals he scored and things like that. But what you get from Kyogo is an intelligence to get there in front of defenders. And also, he finds corners. It's not like he's sending straight to goalkeepers. It's to corners, and he finds the goal very well. But also, alongside that, he gets really good positions, and defenders just can't handle him. So, as much as Dundee were poor defensively yesterday, a lot of this was down to Kyogo being very intelligent.
Lanky67, they're making a point that Ralston came out the other week saying he's more focused on playing for Celtic than he is for Scotland. And I'm sure from a Celtic point of view, it possibly is quite a good thing that he's not away with the international team, no risk of injury or anything like that. He can stay fit. But I want to touch on Kyogo there because, Kyogo, as he seems to be named now by quite a few of the fans, he's been absolutely fantastic since coming to Scotland, especially in that centre-forward role. Initially in that brief substitute appearance he had against Hearts where he came in on the left-hand side, it didn't quite click for him, but ever since he's gone through the middle, he's been absolutely excellent, and he's very all-rounded is what I'd say. At the weekend we saw him scoring a header. He seems to have all kind of goals in his locker. Do you think that that's exactly what Celtic need at the moment? Of course, losing Odsonne Edouard, losing Moussa Dembele a few years ago as well, there was almost that lack of centre forward, but Kyogo seems to have come in and filled it absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that was the million-dollar question. What was going to happen when Edouard left Celtic? But Kyogo has very much answered that question very well. I mean, like I mentioned, his tenacity, his willingness to get in front of defenders, his willingness to find the back of the net. Just to clarify here, I don't think he will be Henrik Larsson level, but what I do think he will be is I think he will be probably one of the best strikers Celtic have had. So yeah, absolutely brilliant from the young man, and 2 goals yesterday. I mean, there was a lot of talk, if I'm not mistaken, Stu, and you might be able to correct me in this. There was a lot of talk about Kyogo potentially getting rested yesterday. Would there have been a very different conclusion or permutation to this game had Kyogo not played? It's $1 million question that we won't find out now. But Kyogo was just fantastic yesterday. And yeah, a lot of the situations was down to deal with Austin's play. I mean, Jota did very well for his first goal in the game. Deal with the rebound. There's a possible talk about offside. I would disagree with that because there wasn't much protest from the Dundee dugout or indeed the Dundee players for that matter. And had it been a deliberate or clear offside, I think it's a different story. But it's clearly not. And but yeah, and Jota did very well for the fourth goal. Got past Kami Kerr, if I'm not mistaken. Ball at the box and Kyogo, bang. So the both of them have been terrific, and it's probably the best partnership that I've seen in Scottish football for a very long time.
And bring me perfectly on there too, Jota, who has been absolutely fantastic, coming in from Benfica. How on earth is it a 6.5 million release clause?
Yeah.
How on earth Benfica have allowed that to happen? I don't understand, because he already looks to be worth at least double that. He's been absolutely fantastic for Celtic. He's a creator and he's a goal scorer. As you said there, the link up he's got with Kyogo has been fantastic. You've also got Lila Bada making a pretty good trident up front there for Celtic. Do you think Jota is one of these players who is a game winner in himself? If Celtic are really needing it at certain times, especially when you think about the Old Firm games coming up, is he the type of player who Celtic can rely on to not necessarily score the goal, but he can be there to create it, he can be there to change a game?
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as Jota being an influential figure and a pivotal figure for Celtic this year, I also think that Celtic need to try and get some more goals out of Giacomakis. Obviously, Giacomakis has been struggling for game time of late, but what I would do if you're not going to include Kyogo in the plans for a match day, such as either resting him or various other things, is I'd be getting Giacomakis involved, try and get him some goals and get his confidence up and running. I mean, you've got 2 really good strikers there. In terms of Kyogo and Giacomakis, and Celtic have not often been renowned in the last few years of relying on Edward, with the occasional midfielder such as McGregor or Forrest or Turnbull even contributing. But this time around, you've got a range of options. You've got Turnbull, you've got McGregor, you've got Forrest who came back in yesterday, but you've also got Kyogo and you've got Jota. So this is very exciting and probably the most exciting Celtic side we've seen in quite a few years.
And of course, the 3 main players who we've touched on there, Tony Ralston, Kyogo and Jota, all 3 of them have come onto the scene because of Ange Postecoglou, as has Lila Bada, Giacomakis, so many different players. Callum McGregor playing in that holding midfield role. All of these players seem to be thriving in this system. How much credit does Postecoglou deserve for the way Celtic are playing at the moment?
Yeah, there was a lot of doubts about Ange Postecoglou. I think there still is, to clarify that. I think I saw a lot of unwarranted answers. But yeah, he's done a good job at Celtic so far. I mean, he's going to be tried and trusted in trophies. He's got to go win trophies at Celtic Football Club. They won't accept anything less. I mean, winning in terms of legacies and things like that, he was let down massively towards the last season. I mean, 10 in a row was there for Celtic. It was ruined. Lennon needs to take accountability for that, as far as I'm concerned. But also, there was a lot of questions after Howe not going through. Eddie Howe, who's took the Newcastle job, so Newcastle must have a bigger budget, or indeed be
away the lads
than Celtic. So anyway, back on to Postecoglou, and this is probably as exciting a team as Brendan Rodgers. Not the same level. Let's clarify, but there is similarities there in their attacking instinct, and that's got to be a positive for me. And the thing is that this project's not yet complete either. There's still 4 or 5 players that I think could come in and do a job. The 4 or 5 players that aren't at the club yet, but through Ange's contacts and homework, you'll get them in.
Definitely, it's definitely been an interesting one. And of course, on the other side of the coin in this game, Dundee did manage to get 2 goals. Just before we touch on Dundee in this match, do you think it's still an issue for Celtic that even when they looked comfortable, obviously going 2-0 up, they suddenly concede through poor defensive error, that once again, they're throwing away these leads in games that they just can't afford to, especially if they want to be going for that title? And I believe you said was it McMullen's 9th assist already this season?
Yeah, 6 in the league and 3 in the League Cup. He was quality in the Championship for Dundee last season as well. But yeah, Dundee weren't in the game until that Mullen goal. I mean, it was a one-sided dominant affair for Celtic before McMullen crossed that ball. And I must say, good play by Dundee. McGowan playing in McMullen, good 1-2 there. And then McMullen crossed the ball in for Mullen, who headed home. And Mullen got a lot of doubters, I'll be honest with you. There was a lot of people clamming over Cummings starting the game yesterday. What I like to see from Dundee moving forward, and I see it in front of my own eyes yesterday, I'd like to see Cummings and Mullen play together. Griffiths will be back at the contention in 3 weeks' time against Motherwell as well, don't get me wrong. I'd like to see Mullen play with a Griffiths or a Cummings. Cummings played with Griffiths when Dundee played Ross County. It didn't work, simple as that. There's a lot of clamour from Dundee fans for Dundee to play 2 up front, but playing Cummings and Griffiths is not the right answer. You need Danny Mullen involved. And I think yesterday showed how massive Danny Mullen is to the Dundee side. Also, Lee Ashcroft did well for his goal as well. Again, another great ball by Mullen and Ashcroft bang. But then defensive failures by Celtic, just not dealing with Mullen, who got a free header, and then Ashcroft got in front of Joe Hart. And I've seen there was a lot of comments in the Celtic state of mind about Joe Hart, and I can understand where they're coming from because he is to blame for that second goal in particular. Yeah.
Definitely. I think I called him Mick Mullen at the start of that question. I apologise there to Danny Mullen for that. But yeah, as you said, Joe Hart there. I think he's been a good keeper with his shot stopping, but I don't think his game is coming out and claiming things. I think he's a keeper who prefers to stay on his line. And as we saw at the end there, it's going to cause Celtic issues, those kind of just silly goals, I guess you'd call them, because for a team like Celtic who need to be going for the title, you can't afford to give away those type of goals. I don't mean to discredit Dundee by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think Celtic should have let them back into that game. As you said there, before Mullen's goal, Celtic weren't in it. They weren't in the match at all. The first Dundee goal, sorry. But are there any positives from a Dundee point of view to take away?
I think the midfield, I think the forward play, because Mullen was really good. Cummings, when he came on, did well. Mullen was really good as always. There's a lot of positives, but at the same time, there isn't as many positives as St Mirren away and Hearts away. So, and that's got to be a worrying picture, I think, for Dundee. The home, I forgot to check the home record, but it appears to be that they've not done very well at home. I think they've done a lot better away from home than they have indeed at Dens Park. So that's got to be a worrying picture for Dundee fans.
Definitely. I believe we have a clip of Postecoglou as well. Am I right in saying?
Yes, we're just going to play it just now. Here's what.
Yeah, it was a good performance, strong performance. We played some excellent football at times, and controlled the game, played it on our terms, and scored 4 great goals, and we missed quite a few. Could have been a little bit more sort of ruthless in front of goals. So overall good. Disappointing to concede 2. I thought we just got a bit sloppy before both goals with just our possession. I think it's part of our sort of process and progress is to understand that we can't lose focus and sort of take liberties with our game. But overall, considering Thursday night we didn't get back till Friday early hours, it was a tough game. I was a bit worried about how we'd go physically, but I thought considering all that was good. Anthony's close to their radar as well. He set him up for a couple. So as I said, they're fantastic young players. Kyogo's not young, but he's only been out of his own country for a couple of months. And as I said, they're in form and they're scoring great goals. Still feel we can be a little bit more ruthless because we're creating a lot of chances. But it's good to see. I think they're feeding off one another and they feel confident, which is good.
Aberdeen also was really good this afternoon.
He's been good all year, he continues to want to improve. He wants to get better, and that's all you want from footballers. And because of that, I think he will.
Of course, I mentioned as well Anthony Ralston, just as we were saying there. And one of the things I think Postecoglou mentioned that really intrigued me was he's saying they need to be more ruthless. And I find that quite funny in the sense that Celtic are one of the top goal scorers in the league, 4 goals at the weekend. It really shows the brand of football that he wants to play, doesn't it? He doesn't want to stop at 3 or 4 and hold on to it. He wants to keep going and going. Obviously, we've seen a couple of 6-0 victories as well for Celtic this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I touched upon it. That was a frustrating picture for Ange Postecoglou. Paul John Dixon and Tony Hargett said in the Celtic State of Mind after the game yesterday that when Celtic played like Livingston and Dundee United, they weren't exactly ruthless in them games either, and it came to bite them back because obviously they drew them games in question. And then this game yesterday, they were comfortable because Dundee, I thought, were quite pitiful. But also the question mark is, when opposition sides are pitiful, why is Celtic not going in the smashing and hitting teams for more than 2 or 3 goals a game? Stu, who's Mas Tassos? I'm just trying to ask. Somebody's going in here. Dave, ask Big Ange if he rates Mas Tassos next time.
I'm not sure. Is it the... I have absolutely no idea, I'm afraid, to be honest. I don't know. It's a youth player from Celtic. I have no idea, unfortunately.
Daniel, if you can tell me who it is, it'd be much appreciated, mate.
Well, I guess we should probably move on to the other side of Glasgow, as Rangers also won a 4-2 victory. I don't know if that's the first time Celtic and Rangers have both won 4-2 on the exact same day in the past. That's definitely a statistic there. But I'm going to start off by saying that, once again, Rangers conceding the first goal. I know they came back to win 4-2 and it was quite comfortable in the end, but how big of a concern is this for Steven Gerrard that, we talked about Celtic's defensive frailties. Rangers keep seeming to concede that first goal, and it should go without saying, but football matches become a lot harder when you go a goal down.
I think Rangers have played a lot better in the last 8 days, Stu, but what is a worrying picture from Rangers' point of view is they're starting games very poorly. They're going under the cosh very early doors in games, and I've been very busy today, so I haven't been able to do my homework. But what I have found from Rangers is they've always seemed to be under pressure, and teams have always had the first shot on target, or indeed scored first whenever they've played the Rangers a lot more times than not this season, which has got to be a worrying picture. Yeah, Rangers have responded most of the time in the right manner, but it's been a worrying picture, but a positive picture in the same sentence. Great for Rangers getting response, and very good for Rangers. I'll bring you on to your next point probably about getting Ryan Kent and Ryan Jack involved. Very good to see them 2 players involved again for Steven Gerrard's side.
Definitely, and Ryan Kent scored a really good goal, but I can't decide if it's a screamer or if the goalkeeper should do better in that situation, because he's quite far off of his line, and it's one of those looping balls that just seems to curl over the top of it. But you think, if he's even a yard back, he could maybe jump up and catch that. Do you think the goalkeeper has to do better in that scenario?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's been good for him this year, but yeah, a lot of improvements to go and make as well. But no, I mean, it's a disappointing one for Ross County, but full credit to Rangers for getting the job done, because if Rangers want to be winning titles and cups again, well, they've not won a cup of Nigeria, have they? So that'd be a very stupid point to go and make. But if they want to go and win the leagues, or indeed go and challenge to win an elusive first cup under Steven Gerrard, believe it or not, they need to start winning against the likes of Ross County and being professional against sides such as Ross County. But yeah, again, Steven Gerrard's obviously in the managerial moonlight with regards to the Aston Villa job, so it'll be just to see what happens with regards to Rangers moving forward, if Gerrard decides to stay or indeed move on. 4 years, in my opinion, Stu, is a very long time in management. I think, excluding the Premier, I think only Depp McChrist at Aberdeen in the recent decade has only managed more than 4 or 5 years in the dugout at a Premiership club.
Definitely. I think Gerrard to Aston Villa is one to keep an eye on. Obviously, the Aston Villa job is a pretty prestigious one in England at the moment with their squad. And I don't know, it's an international break as well. It's quite often these are when managerial changes tend to happen. I don't know if Gerrard would leave. Oh, that's what it is then. In the end.
Well, by the way, I didn't have a clue what you're on about, because I'm obviously not from Glasgow, so that's why I didn't have a clue what you're on about. But thanks, Lanky, and thanks, Dan. I'll need to try and visit this Tassos place next time. I hope they've got some delicious food. I was at the Indian in Perth on Saturday night. Absolutely delicious food. But we'll get on to Perth very later in the show.
We've got plenty to talk about that Perth game. A fantastic one. But we'll maybe get some tips off Postecoglou then about that restaurant. But going back to Rangers there with Ryan Kent, obviously we know how much of a difference he can make to that team. Do you think this game proved just how much he's been missing for them recently?
He scored a fantastic goal yesterday. His attacking instinct and the tenacity of getting the ball was very much seen to be there again, because I made the point to Watty on Friday night that Rangers have been doing really well in terms of getting the ball into the middle and feeding off the strikers, but what they haven't had is a willingness out in the wings. Celtic have got that at the moment. They've got Jota and now Forrest to feed out wide, and they're getting a lot of joy through that. I think Rangers will get a lot of joy through Kent. Kent's not started the season very well, let's clarify, but I hope this injury spell is to look to. I hope Ryan Kent will use this injury spell to look at this and say, I want to come back a lot stronger and bounce back, because he is a top player, but is he the 8 million that Wade's in other clubs were looking to pay for him over the last few years? I don't think he is, but I still think he's a top player.
Definitely a few people in the comments there as well talking about Gerrard potentially going to Aston Villa. Obviously, no Champions League football with Rangers now, potentially one of the ways swaying it. But I think we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that one over the international break. I personally think he'll stay this season for Rangers. I think they've still got a fantastic shot at the Premiership. And I think one of the reasons for that is Joe Aribo. Although a few Rangers players haven't quite been at it, he has been fantastic this season. In my opinion, I think he's been Rangers' best player so far. Obviously, he came up with the first goal again at the weekend. Similar to what I was saying about Kyogo earlier on, Aribo comes up with all kinds of goals, to be honest, and especially impressive from a midfielder. How important, really, has he been to Rangers this season? Obviously, he's not one of those, he's not a Ryan Kent, a James Tavernier, Morelos, one of the Rangers players who often is a game winner getting the headlines, but he's so important to that setup, isn't he?
Do you know what? I look at this and say, I think he's learning from Gerrard, because Gerrard's obviously a midfielder. We all know about how good a player Gerrard was. Aribo's similar, if I'm going to be honest with you. He's similar in terms of he gets into the box, and like you said, about the amount of goals he goes and scores. He's good in terms of getting into the box and tucking them away from 10 yards. He's also good at the long range strikes as well. He'll do a bit of everything, and that's exactly what Gerrard did as well. So he's the all-round midfielder as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely, and sticking with the midfield there, obviously Ryan Jack coming back. I think it's 9 months he's been out for. From a Scotland point of view, it'll be good to have him back in the setup. I assume he will come back into the international setup. But from a Rangers point of view, how big of a impact can he make coming back into that team? Obviously, Stephen Davis was absolutely fantastic last year, but he's not quite been at the same levels this year. And I think they could use somebody like Ryan Jack to just sit in front of that defence. Obviously, we've mentioned there, Rangers are conceding sloppy goals at the beginning of games. Somebody like Ryan Jack, his quality and his experience coming in could really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rangers have missed that steeliness and doggedness about their play. They've been really good at it going forward, but they've also been exploited at the back. And Rangers probably don't have a lot of defensive-minded players in order to make sure they're winning more games than they do draws or losses. So they've needed a defensive-minded player in the midfield area. As much as Aribo's been really good, he's not exactly a defensive-minded player, and neither is Glenn Kamara for that precise matter. So Ryan Jack coming back is a huge positive for that Rangers side. And you can always see Rangers go from strength to strength, but obviously Celtic can go from strength to strength. So I think there's some massive positive for Scottish football, having Celtic and Rangers battle it out with each other again. But also, let's not just rule the two out there. We've also got Hearts, who we'll get onto later on the show, doing very well. Sorry, Stuart. But you've got Hibs who are in a predicament right now, but they're doing well, and Dundee United will start the season very well. So it makes for a very interesting cinch Premiership this season.
Definitely, I think that's the best way to say it. It's so intriguing. I think if you took a handful of people's Premiership predictions at the start of the season, I don't think a single person has gotten it right so far. The way things have panned out, it's been absolutely fantastic. But going to the team who are obviously beaten by Rangers, Ross County. No matter how many times they seem to look good on the pitch and they're able to score goals, we've seen that on a number of occasions. Obviously, the likes of Hearts, they've scored 2 in that game. Again, against Rangers here, they scored 2. They just can't seem to actually win a match. I mean, I say that they did beat Dundee previously before this round of fixtures, but is that a concern about Ross County, that even though they're scoring goals, they just can't seem to keep a clean sheet?
Yeah, 100%. And Ross County have had a lot of defensive failures so far this season, which has probably been their downfall, if I'm going to be honest with you. They've had the problems in terms of they can either score a goal or indeed defend correctly in the early part of the season. But even now, they're winning games fairly well, but they're still not really keeping clean sheets. I mean, they had a good clean sheet just under the fortnight ago at Dens Park against Dundee, but apart from that, they've been pretty open at the back, and Sunday's never side of that, but I also would say they are improving, and there's a long way to go. But alongside this, there's not a lot of time left in order for Ross County to go and turn around their fortunes. And for them to go and turn around their fortunes, they will need clean sheets.
Definitely, and that's kind of a common theme when you look at Dundee and Ross County. Of course, both of them at the bottom of the table, separated by 4 points, and they both played the Old Firm teams at the weekend. You can see some positives within their teams, but both of them are... It's the defence that's letting both teams down, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Ross County signed up the guy Jack Baldwin, and I spoke to a guy I know in Northern Ireland called Josh Bunting about Jack just to get some homework for this show. In fact, I do my homework, and he said that Jack Baldwin's a good presence in the air, but he's not really a ball winning player. I think that's been sorted out a few times already this season, where whenever the ball's been in Jack Baldwin's direction or positioning, Jack Baldwin's not really done enough to try and rectify any situation, and the opposition team have went and scored goals. So I'm not just piling the blame on Jack Baldwin here. I don't think Laidlaw's not had the season that he did last season. He was in tremendous form for County last year, but he's just not been the same goalie this year. But also for Rangers, they've had defensive problems for a good while now. They're not the same opponent. They're not the same team they were last season. Let's face it here, Stuart. Celtic kind of blew the league away here. I mean, Rangers, as much as they were quality, they're very unlimited competition. They could have dropped 10 points and probably still wouldn't have won the league. It was that easy for them last year. Whilst this year, there's probably two teams that will probably go for the league, but then there's 3 or 4 teams who will be very competitive at the top this year.
Do you think that's what's causing Rangers these defensive issues? Do you think the pressure of seeing how well Celtic are playing at the moment is constantly on the back of their minds, knowing that, last season they were basically, it was a one-horse race, really, they could afford to drop points, as you said, on a few occasions. But this year, obviously, they've got Celtic, who are in great form. Hearts are another team as well, who, although a lot of people may not have said it at the start of the season, I think Rangers will definitely have their eye on what they're doing at the moment. And it's a case of, they can't afford to let these games slip, but they are making defensive errors. And it's the same defence from last season, obviously, without Ryan Jack. Do you think that is a concern, that they are blowing away these leads, blowing away these games initially? I mean, they're always finding a way to come back. I should say that, they are grinding out results at the end of the day, but up against a good team like Celtic, a good team like Hearts, if Rangers concede first, they might not be able to get back into it in the same way.
Yeah, 100%, and that's been Rangers' downfall. But that's probably been the story of Steven Gerrard's tenure at Rangers. They've lost games where they've been in worrying positions and just not been able to adapt or indeed react from it. So that's got to be a worrying picture for Gerrard. But also, on the other side, Celtic have been probably the better side over the last few years, excluding the last season. And last year, unfortunately, was just a bad year for Celtic Football Club, both on and off the park. But excuse me, anyway, burped there. Slowly but surely, Celtic are responding in the right way. And that's got to be to Rangers' misdemeanours here. That 2nd of January game is a massive game for both clubs now. Rangers are 4 points clear, but they're 4 points clear having done things the ugly way. Celtic got a bit of galvanisation, having beaten Aberdeen at Pittodrie, having played ugly. Sometimes beating teams and winning ugly is the ultimate way to win a league, and you're seeing it over the last few years and seeing it this season already, which alternative possible permutations with regards to positive success and outlooks for teams.
Definitely. I, for one, I'm really looking forward to the next Old Firm, of course. But we'll move on to the next match. And as you can see right below me there in our title, it was a high-scoring weekend. This was the game of the weekend. 7 goals scored. Hearts winning 5-2 against United. What a game. I'll just say straight away, what did you make of this one? I only watched the highlights. I didn't watch the game live, but it was very enjoyable. The goals were absolutely fantastic, and it just seemed like a crack. I've got a few pals, Hearts fans, who were there, who said it was just unbelievable, to be honest, that Sports Scene wouldn't do it justice. It was that good of a game.
Yeah, it was a fantastic game, 7 goals. And I'm not surprised, to be honest, because it's 2 very forward-thinking sides and 2 sides that like to play some good football. So full credit to both teams for that. And Hearts have probably played the best they have for a good while. To score 5 goals against Dundee United is very good goal, and considering Dundee United have done very well defensively in recent games. Also, Dundee United, it's very unlike them to score 2 goals and come away with a defeat. So Tam Courts will be very worried about the outcome of this game, if I'm going to be honest with you. That's 2 defeats in a trot for Tam Courts. And I always said to people that the Dundee United roller coaster would indeed happen at some stage of the season. It looks as though that stage is happening right now. I mean, Dundee United have had a lot of plaudits, and justifiably so. They've done very well for themselves and done very well in the start of the season, and they play a lot of attractive football. They're misdemeanors, or their stumbling block is perhaps the fact that they don't have an accustomed striker. Nicky Locke's a really good striker, very intelligent, but he won't score 15, 20, 25 goals for you this season. He's a better number 10 than he is a number 9. But on to Hearts, and they showed how they're a really good side at the weekend. The ability to go and score goals, but also their ability to keep things organised despite the fact that Dundee United scored 2 goals can't be undermined. They did very well. Their attacking outlets were on fire again, and probably Halliday being suspended was maybe a blessing in disguise, so to speak. I mean, Halliday's offers a lot of steeliness, desire, ability to win. But also, there's another side to this by saying Halliday being suspended was probably a good thing for Hearts because it allowed them to play a different way in a different dimension, in a different system, which obviously helped with all 3 points. So maybe a massive help there.
Definitely. I think I'll get onto the Dundee United defence in just a minute there, but one of the things I've got written down here is, has Ben Woodburn arrived in Scottish football now? Obviously, he's come from down south at Liverpool, a very highly rated youngster. He's into the Welsh setup as well. There was a lot of people saying this was a fantastic signing from Hearts, and although Hearts have been great, he's not quite been the star yet, but 2 fantastically taken goals at the weekend. Do you think this is the player who a lot of people expected Hearts were going to get?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Ben Woodburn came in, did very well. He just didn't hit the ground running immediately. But what I think Saturday shows that there's a turning point for him, and yeah, he very much has hit the ground running, and he has evolved in the game that we call Scottish football. He's doing very well for himself, and Hearts of Robbie Nelson deserves a lot of credit here, I think, because he has taken a lot of players that we maybe weren't aware about as much, but they're players that possess a lot of qualities. Cammy Devlin's done very well for himself. Benny Baningamy has done very well for himself. The defensive acquisitions have came in and done very well. But also, we'll get onto Scotland towards the end. But probably John Suter has probably had one of his best seasons in a Hearts jersey and did very well. And he's came back from injury and came in and did very well for himself. So justifiable call up to Scotland squad for him.
Definitely, and of course he's staying fit at the moment. He's not got an injury, which is definitely helping with that. And one of the players who you picked up on there was Cammy Devlin. It was just another stellar midfield performance from him, because he has been superb, to be honest. I don't think many people knew about him at all before he came to Hearts, but he's been fantastic, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. His willingness to get up the park, but also his willingness to drive along the midfield is very good. He's averaging 10, 11 kilometres per game, which is obviously an athlete runner. So he's doing very well for himself. But also, I feel that the system of Scottish football is probably helping him, and the state of Scottish football is probably helping him. Just in the way he plays, he's probably better than an Australian side, because Australians a lot more forward thinking, while Scottish football is a lot more laboured and laid back, and there is a bit of grit involved in Scottish football, so it's maybe a massive positive, and that's probably a major attribute to why he's doing so well at Hearts.
Definitely. And well, of course, we'll talk about John Suter later on in the show, but we'll switch over to Dundee United, because Charlie Mulgrew, who's not made the Scotland team, however, despite being in his mid-30s now, a lot of people said he would be good enough to get in it, because Dundee United have been fantastic defensively, but they just capitulated at the weekend, conceding 5 goals. As you said, now that's back-to-back defeats for Tam Courts' side. Is that a bit of a concern? One of the things I noticed watching as I said, I only watched the highlights, was Benjamin Siegrist was getting furious. I think he was booked after the second goal that Cochrane put in the back of the net. Fantastic technique on the volley. And he was running up, Siegrist was running up to the referee and shouting in his face, getting a booking for it. They seem to be losing their heads a little bit.
Yeah, Tam Courts is usually meticulous in his tactics, but I'm pretty sure he'll be, despite the fact we're in an international week now, I'm pretty sure he'll be in the drawing board this morning trying to sort out 1 or 2 things. Because, I mean, last week at St Johnstone, it was only a bit of craft by Ali Crawford that separated the sides. But Saturday was a massive worry for Dundee United, considering the fact that they conceded 5 goals. I don't think we all looked at this and said it was going to be 5 goals through the teams. I mean, Hearts are a really good side and probably are on paper a better side than Dundee United. That's no disrespect to Tam Courts' side, but Hearts probably have a better pedigree of quality all over the park at this precise moment in time, whilst Dundee United are probably strong in the midfield area, and that's what made them stand out, like Levitt and Fuchs and Harks. They're very strong midfield players, and in my honest opinion, could easily get a game for one of the Glasgow two. they're very similar players to McGregor, Turnbull, Aribo, and probably Ryan Jack. But and that's what's made them stand out in a little bit. I mean, excuse me, against Hibs, that was what made them win the game. They were very good in terms of their attacking outlet, but also very good in terms of the ball retention. And that was a disappointment for Dundee United on Saturday, the ball retention. And also defensively, Ryan Edwards scored. Great to see Ryan Edwards score again. But yeah, capitulation at the back, a huge worry for Tam Courts.
I didn't actually realise that Edwards' goal took a deflection at first, and I was just sitting watching thinking that was a fantastic strike, and then it does come off the Hearts defender. But you mentioned Dylan Levitt there, another Welsh international in this game, two of them competing against each other. But going back to Hearts' attack in this game, obviously they scored 5 goals, and none of them actually came from Liam Boyce, who's their top goal scorer this season. Is that quite a positive from Robbie Nielsen's point of view more than anybody, that he's got goals all around his side, coming from everywhere? Of course, we've seen John Souther as well. But that finish from outside of the box a few weeks ago, that is.
That's the second. He scored. That's the second week in a row he scored, is it?
I don't think he got one in this game, but he got one a couple of weeks ago from outside the box. He just places it. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. But they've got a lot of quality over the park, and that's telling in terms of how they've started the season very well. Hearts are probably contenders for Europe, if we're going to be honest. I mean, they've got a lot of quality strikers, and the fact that they've had the reliance on Boyce has been a tell factor in recent weeks, but also the fact that they're getting other players involved is a huge positive for Robbie Nielsen's side as well. And it wavers the pressure off Boyce a little bit, because Armand Gouet hasn't really started the season very well. Only 1 goal this season, which is a frustration for indeed Hearts and indeed the player himself. So, but Josh Janelli's a top player, and Barry Mackay did very well at the weekend as well. So a lot of good quality now. They just need to gel together a bit more, and they'll be fine.
Definitely. Josh Ginnelly has one of the most catchy songs that is going at the moment, and I hate how often it gets stuck in my head, just as much as the Fashion Sakala song. But just want to round this game off talking back on Dundee United at the moment. Do you think there are still enough positives to take away? Obviously, the start that they've made, getting results against the Old Firm sides, a massive 3-0 victory against Hibs. Do you think they can keep using these positives to move forward despite the heavy defeat against Hearts?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Tam Court's a very positive manager. Saturday will hurt him big time, but a lot of positives all the same. But this major disappointment was in the 5 goals, and he'll not be happy with losing the game. But this is an early stage in terms of the project with Tam Courts at Dundee United, and he'll be seeking improvement. Don't get me wrong, but it has to be done in a very slow process. The process is taking time, but the process is working, and if the process doesn't work, that's when you'll get worried. But the process is working, and they need to continue with that, because they've earned a lot of points. And let's not forget, they beat Rangers at Tardis, and indeed drew with Celtic away from home, and indeed beat Hibs at Easter Road. So there's a lot to be positive about with Dundee United, and they'll look to respond against Aberdeen. It's the perfect game for them to go and respond in a few weeks' time.
Definitely, of course, the new firm that'll be. But speaking of Aberdeen, they did suffer a 2-0 defeat at the hands of Motherwell. Almost an opposite run of form here. Aberdeen had started to pick up, Motherwell had started to fall away. Motherwell come away with a 2-0 win. 2-0 win, yeah. And it was that man again, Kevin Van Veen, with 2 goals in the score sheet. We've spoken quite a lot of times, various people on the state of Scottish football, about how good Kevin Van Veen is. He's done it again, hasn't he? He is superb.
Yeah, it was his 4th goal of the season. We've been qualified by our resident Dawn and Glenn Schroeder. He started the season very well, I may add. 4 goals this season, 3 against us, 3 against Aberdeen for that matter. So yeah, he scored 4 goals this season, 3 against Aberdeen, and yeah, he loves a goal against Aberdeen, doesn't he? But Van Veen has been a really good player, for a really good acquisition for Motherwell this season. Both him and Tony Watt have been linked up really well with each other, and they've got Connor Shields in there as well. And he hasn't really transitioned into a proper Premiership player yet, but there is signs of things to come moving forward, and he's done very well. He scored against St Mirren, if I'm not mistaken, Connor Shields. So he's sure he can find the net in this league, but the striker scoring is always a massive part of football, and Van Veen scoring the weekend is a massive positive. The fact that he scored 3 against Aberdeen is a worrying tale for Aberdeen Football Club, and indeed for Dave Cormack, who'll probably be speaking to Alan Burrows and probably be very frustrated.
Definitely. And although there weren't that many goals in this game, there were 8 yellow cards, a bit of a ill-discipline throughout the game. But how do you think Aberdeen react and move forward from this game? Because obviously, as I said, they had picked up a few results recently. They were starting to get better. I'm sure Dave Cormack was delighted. But once again, they've gone back to this now. They're coming up against United in the next game. Obviously, the opening day of the season, it was a 1-0 victory over United. Can they use that as a way to bounce back from this game quickly?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Aberdeen have had a good period of late. Also, yeah, they are hitting a good period just now. Not exactly a purple patch, but it is a good period, and it's a better period compared to what they were at beforehand because they were losing a lot of games recently. So they are starting to hit a bit of a consistent feel. But Saturday is a major disappointment for Stephen Glass's side. This was the same starting 11 that played against the Hearts. Could that have been a telling factor in the game? I think it was, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, it definitely was. It's so difficult from my point of view to predict and to rate Aberdeen because you just don't know what you're going to get. Do you think that's the best way to sum it up at the moment? Is you don't know what Aberdeen team you're going to see come out onto the pitch?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Aberdeen's such an unpredictable side, and unpredictable in the wrong reasons. I may add, not exactly unpredictable in terms of magic or positivity. There was a lot going right at the start of the season, but I think it was a lot going right because the system worked. Johnstone came off injured, and things just deteriorated from that point onwards. I mean, Aberdeen went in that barren run that they were on, and things didn't improve from that moment onwards. I mean, they had a few near misses, such as Celtic, and they had a near miss against Dundee as well. But overall, massively frustrating from an Aberdeen Football Club point of view. But Stephen Glass has had his doubters. I wouldn't Tannadice will alleviate any fear of him getting sacked first and foremost, but also get him a bit more popular with the fan base at Aberdeen Football Club because Aberdeen fans love a youth firm derby victory.
Definitely, and it's a results-driven industry. You hear that saying so often with football. And if he does go and get the victory against United, as you say, he may well get a lot of fans back on his side. So we'll have to wait and see that. But we'll finish up of the 5 games on another game you were at. Probably the best game of the weekend, if I'm being brutally honest. St Johnstone 0, St Mirren 0. What did you make of this one? Was Chris Kane's red card the highlight of the match?
No, it's the tablet night, so thanks to Stephen Watt for that. Much appreciated. Stephen Watt is a St Johnstone Football Club commentator, so thanks very much to yourself, Stephen, for that recommendation. Much appreciated. Not myself, Grant Campbell, John Blaisdell, and Carl McFarlane had a terrific day out, but yeah, I felt it was a red card on Kane. At the time, I thought it was a little bit harsh. We did wonder why, but I haven't watched it back. I can see why it's a sending off. The highlight for me in this game was actually the end of the game, which Sportsman didn't actually publish. It was Sean Rooney was in the danger zone of the St Mirren area, and he didn't exactly get on the end of a ball, and he was involved in a collision with the Almack in the St Mirren goal. And then it all just handbags, not exactly severe handbags, intense handbags, but it did break off a little bit at the end of the game. And the customary handshakes were non-existent, and Johnson weren't even clapping to their own supporters, which I found a little bit disrespectful, if I'm going to be honest with you. St Mirren, a good draw for Jim Goodwin. Jim Goodwin was balanced in his assessment of the game. A draw was a fair result. No get away from it. But if anybody was going to go and score this goal, it was St Mirren. So, Stuart, I've got 2 minutes in here, and if you can think of anything else, then this is probably the most boring game you're going to see in the Cinch Premiership this season.
It didn't look that great from seeing it at home. I know Sean Rooney does love the Fitba, but it just didn't look too much. But I think what's interesting about this game as well is these two teams have been so similar this season. Obviously, they're in 8th and 9th, St Mirren, St Johnstone together. I think 1 point separating them at the moment. Do you think that's kind of how they're going to finish this season? Neither of them look like they're going to be able to push for the top half of the table, but at the same time, neither of them look like they're going to fall away into that relegation zone. They've got too much quality between them. Do you think that's just sort of how they're going to finish this season? I mean, we're only just refreshing the games into it, but it already looks like they've kind of cemented their position. The
question I have is if St Johnstone don't hit the heights, the question is, do they want to finish in the top 4 or the top 6? The expectation in this externally is to do want to finish in the top 3, but to finish in the top three, you need to be beating St Mirren as far as I'm concerned. I mean, St Mirren are a very good side, but beating St Mirren can define your season very much so. Beating St Mirren and beating clubs around about you kind of explore your ways and how your season will pan out. And Saturday will be a frustrating one, but it's also been a frustrating season for St Johnstone. It's kind of been a European hangover in a way for St Johnstone. They did very well in Europe and just fell a bit short in terms of European football, and just haven't exactly got any luck results-wise. Because I didn't think they were that good, and I was at the game, but they had a bit of a doggedness about them and got the job done, and that was a fairly good thing about them. It does show their mentality, which they maybe wouldn't have had a couple of years ago, and it shows the job that Carl Davis is doing. I think Jim Goodwin on the other side is doing a really good job at St Mirren. They've got a defensive doggedness about them. They went a really good run until recently. So Saturday's a good draw away for St Mirren, and St Mirren have picked up some good results against teams that are around about in the table. Dundee was a massive disappointment last week for Jim Goodwin's side, but clean sheet was a massive help. Brophy, I thought did well when he came on Saturday, but just didn't get that goal. And Curtis Main had a bit of a presence about him, but just he's not that player to go and score goals. So that's a worrying picture. But both sides will be happy with a point, and sure, I've got some positive views here. This is the best show in the state of mind.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'd like to think so, the same. I like to think I'm not too boring to listen to. But, we have finished on the Premiership games, and I think we'll round off here in the last 10 minutes talking about the national team, because we have a rather pretty important game coming up this week, Scotland-Moldova, of course. We will touch on it later on the state of Scottish football later on in the week in more detail. But over the weekend, we had some pretty big breaking news that Grant Hanley and Ryan Fraser have pulled out of the Scotland team, and John Souttar has come into it. And from what I could see across Twitter, certainly, that this news was absolutely fantastically received by fans, to be honest. I think John Souttar has had a fantastic season. We've previously spoken about how well Hearts have done. He's got goals in him as well. He's not been in the Scotland's team for a number of years, obviously injuries galore, to be honest. But how pleased are you to see John Souttar back in the team? Because certainly from a neutral point of view, a lot of fans were happy to get him back in.
Yeah, it was just a massive worry, him getting injured, to be honest with you, but I mean, Grant Hanley's a massive miss for the Scotland side, because a lot of the success that Scotland have enjoyed in recent times has been down to the fact that Hanley's done well in the defensive sense. I mean, he's been a rock at the back. It's like a wall, even.
A very fast one.
Yeah, exactly. And do we have the players to adapt to that? I think we do, but he will be a massive miss. And I mean, the important thing is I would start Souttar on Friday, but also I would make sure we have a system to just go and kill the game off early doors. If we hold it, there's that alleviation or that desperation in Scotland's play that will suggest that we'll need to go and get a goal, or indeed pick up a deserved result against Denmark next Monday evening. So yeah, we need a result on Friday night. I think Souttar coming in is a massive bonus and a massive positive. I mean, he's really good and very similar to Hanley in terms of his defensive awareness and his defensive qualities of play. But also, what you'll get from Souttar is he'll have a desire to do well in the Scotland jersey again after his Hearts misdemeanours with regards to getting injured. So there is a desire from John Souttar to do well. And I think that's been notified already this season with his Hearts performances at club level, which hopefully can take it in international level over the next week.
Definitely. And as you say, we need to set up with a system to go and win the game. However, we have lost one of our forwards in Ryan Fraser missing out. I don't think he's made too much of an impact for the Scotland team recently, but with Lyndon Dykes on a booking already, it's a bit of a mystery as to who'll play up alongside to Che Adams. You know, Kevin Nisbet is the obvious replacement in terms of a fit, but he's completely out of form at the moment at club level. Who do you think can come into that position? Because obviously we've seen Jacob Brown being selected from Stoke City. Obviously he was the big call up for this team. Nobody'd really heard much about him before. Obviously he's chosen to represent Scotland. Do you think he's going to get thrown in at the deep end, so to speak? Because I think Ryan Fraser would be the obvious choice to come in there, but now he's missing. I don't quite know who Steve Clarke's going to go with.
Well, Jacob Brown scored at the weekend, and that was a massive bonus for Jacob, and shows that he can score goals. And he was an unknown quantity when the squad was announced last week, but here's hoping he can go and do well. I'll be honest, I don't think he will, but I hope we start Jacob Brown on Friday, just because Moldova will have no knowledge whatsoever of the man. It's an opportunity for Brown to go put himself in this environment, go and score a goal, and make his mark, make a mark for himself already, which after one game would be completely unknown for, because after one game it's very hard for somebody to make that sort of impact as Brown could potentially do. So there is the possibility that he could go and start on Friday evening. Also, on the other side, do you rest? Do you put him on the bench and then go and put him one way into the game? There's a lot of unknown permutations in this precise moment in time. Also, for Ryan Fraser, massive worry with regards to his own future, if I'm going to be honest with you, because yeah, it's a worrying picture, Ryan Fraser not being in the squad, but he's not really done a lot in the Scotland jersey, if I'm going to be honest with you. And I mean, he has angered a few Scotland fans in recent times, which is justified. But also, when he's on his game, he could be a top player. The Bournemouth debacle for Ryan Fraser has probably not exactly put him in any great shape or form. I mean, he was in very good form to start off with at Bournemouth, and it kind of deteriorated towards the end of Eddie Howe's tenure. And yeah, Eddie Howe being obviously appointed Newcastle manager. What does that mean for Ryan Fraser's future? It's $100 million question right now, as far as I'm concerned. But for country, he's not really getting any motivation from the fact that there's been changes, both on and off the park at Newcastle United. So for Ryan Fraser, I hope he uses this injury period to go and say to himself, I need to kick on here. I need to be better than where I was at 6 to 8 months ago.
Definitely. I think one of the interesting things about Ryan Fraser as well is that he doesn't really have a place in our setup for Scotland. I don't think in our 3-5-2. I don't think he's defensively capable of playing that wing back role in the same way that James Forrest can fill there. But equally, I don't think he can really play in the front two. And when the Newcastle takeover happened, I was being a bit biased from a Scotland point of view, thinking, how is Ryan Fraser going to get game time, because they're going to sign players, and the way he's performed for Newcastle, I would assume he'd be one of the first ones to either be replaced or to get benched. But because Eddie Howe's come in, I'm sort of changing my tune with that a little bit, because I think he might get a game under Eddie Howe, purely because under Eddie Howe in the 18-19 season, Ryan Fraser was fantastic. I think Eden Hazard was the only player in the English Premiership to have more assists than him in that season, which is obviously pretty good company to be amongst. I think he could potentially come onto a game, and I think that could only be a good thing for Scotland. Do you think that getting Eddie Howe in could potentially spark some new life into the Ryan Fraser Newcastle saga?
I think so. There is a lot of a worry just now, because I don't think there was a pleasing agreement between Howe and Fraser when Fraser left Bournemouth. But I think these things will be kept internal, and these things will be kept behind closed doors. And I think for both parties concerned, I think it's a huge chapter, and so it should be. I mean, Eddie Howe's been out in the game for a long time now. When you look at it, he's had the opportunity to take a break. Obviously, the Celtic situation arose. It was very disrespectful and unwarranted towards Celtic Football Club, I must say. Also, alongside this, Ryan Fraser hasn't exactly hit the heights that he did 3-4 years ago. So it's an opportunity for a fresh start for both parties concerned, I feel.
Definitely. And of course, Eddie Howe has been able to get his coaching staff at Newcastle. There was a few funny jokes from a lot of Scotland fans on Twitter the other day, where I think Fabrizio Romano had tweeted out saying that the Eddie Howe deal to Newcastle was potentially in a little bit of danger because he couldn't get the coaching staff with Newcastle. And I think a lot of Scotland fans were saying, hang on, where have I read that exact statement before? But as we've seen today, it was announced that Eddie Howe has gotten the Newcastle job. So it'll definitely be one to keep an eye on. But just going to end quickly here on, another manager in England, Daniel Farke's been sacked at Norwich, so Billy Gilmore potentially getting more games at club level. But I just want to finish here on the Scotland team. Do you think seeing John Souttar come in is going to give him just almost a sense of accomplishment about how well he's played this season, and can he translate that into a Scotland shirt?
Yeah, I think so. As I touched upon, there'll be a desire from John Souttar because of his injury problems. You're seeing a different mentality to John Souttar. You're seeing a John Souttar that's matured in terms of his age, and he's probably getting better with age, but also you're seeing a John Souttar that wants to go and do well for himself. He's probably seeing how well his brother's doing within Stoke. If Stoke, is it? Harry?
Yeah,
Stoke?
does he represent Australia?
Yeah, and he's also representing Australia, as we touched upon there, but he'll want to replicate what his brother's doing with Australia. And they're both Lawrence Kirk based, so they both come from very good backgrounds, indeed, and they'll be wanting to just go and do very well. But Suter is very similar to Hanley. He's maybe lacking a little bit of leadership skills, but apart from that, he's everything that Grant Hanley is.
Definitely. Well, it will be an interesting game. Scotland will make it tough regardless of what happens. But I'd like to see John Souttar start. Like you said earlier on, I think it would be good to see him come into that game against Moldova. But I guess only time will tell. I'd like to thank David for joining me tonight. I've really enjoyed talking about many, many goals in the Scottish Premiership. Apart from St Johnstone, St Mirren, there weren't any in that one. And I'd like to thank everyone else for joining us tonight. We'll be back at the same time at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Hopefully Twitter is playing ball. Hopefully Twitter is working tomorrow. But if not, there's still plenty of other ways for you to tune in. But yeah, thanks for now.